I have to admit that in all the years that I've been in my present position, I've never been as concerned about the short to medium term outlook in the South African economy as I am right now. Over the last 20 years, I've looked at what's happening and I've known there are structural weaknesses here, there are possible positives on the other side. But one has had a sense that we have just been muddling along. We have not performed to our full potential. We've had an average growth rate of 3.2% over the last 20 years. On the one hand, as wonderful neoliberalists from LSE, we would argue, that's the new catchphrase in our economy. We would argue that the government has just not been willing to make the hard choices for fear of upsetting some of its own membership who are still very ideologically driven. But at the same time, they haven't taken the really populist measures that everyone is fearful of: nationalization, land claim appropriation without compensation. And the result has been that South Africa's economy has been very closely correlated with the global economy. And that has led me to believe that in the past that, don't look at internal factors, but look at external factors to drive economic growth. What's been happening, however, in the last few years, and is gathering momentum, is that correlation between South Africa's performance and that of the world economy is gradually breaking down. South Africa is progressively underperforming in relation to the rest of the world. And in light of the events of the past year, and in fact the events that are currently taking place right now, I am asking myself, we have been fearful for a long, long time about, where's this all going to end? We're not creating enough growth to generate enough jobs. We're not educating our people sufficiently to become employable. Where's this all going to end? And I'm beginning to wonder if we are now in the throes of that climax. I had a rather scary read of the NUMSA memorandum to employers. I don't know if any of you have read it regarding this current strike. And it simply reinforced my fears that what we are now seeing, finally, is a worker revolt against the existing capitalist order of business, an order that is still seen to be primarily white-owned and exploitative of the masses, and has been derived from the legacies of apartheid. And we now have the final struggle. We had the political struggle 20, 30 years ago. Now we have the economic struggle. And if that is the case, and I think the litmus test is going to be the duration of this NUMSA strike. If that is the case, and we find that the strike lasts a lot longer, I think there's a far deeper message than simply that there's an unwillingness to compromise. There's a deeper message that we want to see a change in the existing order of business in South Africa. And that could lead to a very nasty outcome for the next 3 years. It's a scenario that we've always thought about as being possible in the longer term. What I'm raising here today is, are we actually in the here and now starting to see that scenario panning out? Not next year or 3 years' time, but right now.
Azar, if I just come back to your opening comment about saying that you've watched this for many, many years and you've never been more concerned. I mean, I'm trying to think back to the 80s when we were a very isolated siege economy. Are you really comparing where we are to that?
I do believe that we could go downhill very, very fast if we're not careful. And what concerns me is I'm not worried about the long, long term. I think, and I totally concur with Adrian, that if we get this economy right, even 6% is a small fry. We could get to 8 to 10% in the long run. But I'm almost scared that there is a deliberate attempt now to bring the economy to its knees in order to just change the existing structure completely. There's an ideological drive to do that. And I don't believe that the business sector has really woken up to that.